So what happens when you're factoring a quadratic, but the lead coefficient is not 1? Well, there are two different methods you can use. You can use a table method, and then when you're finished with the table method, you're going to have to use grouping. You're going to have to turn these 3 terms into 4 terms, and then you'll group them. But I'm going to show you a little bit simpler method. All right, so if you've got the 3 terms, you're going to do the same thing where when the very first term, 3r squared, since 3 is prime, this is a simple way to do it. You still take factors of 3r squared and put it into the first sets of parentheses. So since 3 is prime, you'd have 3r in one of the sets and 1r in the other set of parentheses. Okay? Then you take factors of -6, and factors of -6 will go into the second set of parentheses. Here's the tricky part. Since -6 has 2 sets of factors, you still have to consider how you're going to come up with the sum of 7r. So it's going to be 3r times this factor plus r times this factor. So you've got -6 and 1, you have 1, -6, you have 2, -2, 3, 2, -3. All the while you have to think about 3r times something plus r times something, and it has to be positive r. So then you just have to experiment. If you do 3r times 6, you're going to get a pretty big number. Then you would end up having r times 1 or -1. Well, those two do not add up to +7. You could have 3r times 1, which is 3r. That would leave r times -6. Well, those don't add up to +7. So we can forget about those. Now we can experiment with the other ones. So we would have 3r. If we put -2 here, 3r times -2 would be -6r. That would leave +3 there. Well, r times 3 is 3r. Those two do not add up to 7r, so we can't put a negative there. So let's put positive numbers over on the right side, since it has to add up to +7. Well, if I put +3 here and -2 here, look at what we have. 3r, let me do this. 3r times +3, so 3r times 3 is 9r. And then we have r times -2. Well, that's -2r. And now look, when you add those together, you get 7r. So this is actually how I learned how to solve quadratics when the lead coefficient is not 1. And then you could do the zero property method, which is what I have down below. Set each of those equal to 0. And then add 2, and then divide both sides by 3. So when you divide both sides by 3, you get r is equal, that doesn't look like 3, 2/3. Or you could say, all right, let's use inverse properties. The opposite of -2 is +2. The inverse of multiplying 3 is dividing 3. And over on this one, the inverse, or the opposite, or the inverse of +3 is -3. And there you have your two results. Okay, but I'm also now going to show you the table method if some of you have a difficult time doing this. So remember, it's factors of the a times c So 3 times negative 6, which is negative 18, factors of negative 18 that add up to the b value. So this is a times c, factors of a times c that add up to b. Well, that would be pretty easy, 9 and negative 2. But you can't go directly, because look at what we have here. We have 3r subtract 2, r plus 3. That is not r plus 9, r subtract 2. So I'm going to cover up all this stuff so it's not confusing. So what you're going to do is when you get these two factors, you have to bring down the 3r squared. You have to bring down the negative 6. And then you're going to take that 7r, and 7r becomes these two factors. So plus 9r and subtract 2r. And now you can go ahead and group. Remember, when you group something, the second set, when there's that negative sign right there, this needs to be negative 6. But when you do negative times negative, that becomes positive 6. So this negative sign right here forces this sign to change. Whatever the sign is, forces it to change. And now the grouping method says take out like terms. So 3r squared and 9r both share a 3r. Well, 3r squared divide 3r just leaves r. 9r divide 3r leaves positive 3. Then we put a subtract sign. 2r and 6 share a 2. 2r divided by 2 leaves r. 6 divided by 2 leaves positive 3. Now these both share that r plus 3, and we can cancel that. And everything that's left on the outside is 3r subtract 2. And all of that equals 0. And again, the inverse of positive 3 is negative 3. The inverse of negative 2 is positive 2. The inverse of multiplying 3 is dividing 3. So that result right there, let me erase all of this stuff. That result right there was the same result that we had a little bit ago. There are two different methods of doing it, but when the lead coefficient is 1, you can do this method. If you're pretty good at your factoring skill, your kind of factor skills. And then there is the table of values method, and then you turn it into a grouping. All right, that's it.